Hi, media team folks. I believe Christine Coe might be in the attendees list. If you wouldn't mind promoting, thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for your patience, and I'm sorry for my delay. So I would like to call to order the Common Council Executive Committee meeting of October 29, 2024. And we'll quickly move on to the minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we don't move that fast. We move to figure out if we have quorum. Karen, can you please take the quorum list there? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Call the roll.
President Figueroa Cole,
Here.
Vice President Duncan,
Present.
Alder Govindarajan is excused. Alder Conklin, Alder Martinez Rutherford,
Present.
That was Conklin.
Alder Uguer,
Present.
Oh, no, it wasn't.
Alder Harrington McKinney, Alder Curry is. I have to check my
She
notes.
was supposed to be online.
Oh, yes, that's right, virtual. Okay. Oh, Alder Conklin. I see Alder Conklin in the list. Oh. All right. I'm going to mark you present since I see you. Hello. Okay. We have quorum.
Already, thank you, Karen. Now, can we go ahead and move to the minutes? Is there any changes, suggestions for the minutes? If that is the case, please raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Motion to approve.
Second, please.
Second.
Move it down.
I think it was Alder Martinez Rutherford.
Okay.
We cannot hear you all.
Thank you, Alder. Thank you, Vice President Duncan. Is there any objection on recording a unanimous vote for the minutes? No objections, so that gets approved. Thank you, everyone. Now, public comment?
Yes.
Do we have public comment?
No registrants.
There's no register for public comment. So we move to disclosures and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city ethics code. Are there any disclosures or recusals? I don't see any hands raised, so we'll move on.
Looks like Alder Curry is. Can I grab Alder?
Yes,
And I see Alder Curry has joined us. I'm marking you present as well.
thank you. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is Legistar 85773, overview of the 2025 budget data file. And I think we have Christine on the line. So I don't know if you're going to show your screen, if you guys had that figured out. Thank you, Christine.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here. And thank you for inviting me to speak on the budget data file. So I'm just going to do a quick demonstration of what is included in the data and how to navigate these materials. If you go to the city's budget finance website and go to the budget tab, this is where you'll find all of our materials. And then expand 2025 budget. Most of our items that you've been looking at and we've been directing you to are under this operating budget process. But the budget data is actually under budget outlook. And we may be rearranging some things at a later date, but right now you'll find it under budget outlook and under budget data. So if you click on executive budget data, this will download an Excel file. You might have to disable pop-up blockers. on your browser, but it should open up in a downloads folder. And what you'll see is an Excel file that has 3 tabs. The first tab explains what all of the fields and columns are in the data itself. So what the field name is and a description of what data is included. The data file, which has about 9,000 rows of data, and then a pivot table that has some preset views that you can look at. So I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of views that I think might be useful. So again, with the executive data, the org object project is a unique identifier for each account that we have in the city. So this is every single line item in the budget is listed out here. You can filter by fund. Each agency has a number in our ERP system as well as agency name. So you can filter for assessor, finance, CDD, etc. And then each of the services also has a number and name, and so on. And again, all of the definitions of each of these fields is in this info tab. When you go to, I think the most useful thing here is the pivot table that we have set up. Ultimately, all of the data that's in this file is what we present in the book. And it's really just a different way of looking at the same data, and it can allow you to more quickly skim through certain items without having to flip through the 500-page book. So in this default view, what we're showing here is it's filtered for the general and library fund agencies, and it's showing all expenses by major. So all of the expenses and line items are grouped into what we call majors, which are categories of revenues and expenses. So you'll see here, all of the revenues start with the number 4 and all expenses start with 5. So for expenses, you'll see salary, benefits, supplies, purchase services, etc. And also we have this slicer with all of the agencies. So right now, all of the agencies are selected, but you could clear out the filter. It's just taking a minute to load, and you can view agency by agency. I'm just clearing the filter. I'm going to deselect to give an example. Okay, so if you can either select multiple, you can clear filters, you can select one or more agencies depending on what options you have. So for example, if I were to click the finance department, this is just showing me the expenses, the agency budget by major within the finance department. This view filters out general purpose revenues like property tax levy and state aid, and any of the revenue numbers here are what we call agency revenues. This will be smaller items like transfer in or charges for service that are specific to the agency. If you go back into the budget and you go to the 2025 operating budget, and if you were to look specifically for the finance department, I'm just going to show you how you can compare the two items to show that some of the numbers are the same and show where looking at it in the Excel file might be beneficial for you. On the right side of my screen, I have the PDF budget book, and then on the left side, I have the data file. So right on the data file, it's filtered for general and library fund, and I have finance selected. It's giving me a total budget of $6,090,584. So here you'll see the total budget is the same. And then if you scroll down, and you look, how much is in salaries, that's $4,672,214. That's the same number here in salaries. So in a lot of ways, the default view is set up to mirror what you see in the budget book. So it's not giving you any additional information, but it does allow you to quickly flip between agency, go from one agency to the next, again, without flipping through the book. So if you want to quickly skim, what's the total salaries in a specific agency, you could find that much faster here than by going through the book. So something that's not in the default view that if you're familiar with how pivot tables are set up, you'll be able to add more fields to the view. So here, the pivot table fields, I'm expanding the more fields, and then this is giving me all of the columns that you saw in the data tab. So you can add each of the fields as another layer of data in the pivot table. So here, again, we have finance. Let's say I just want to know how much we're paying the budget team to put together the budget. So what you can do is take budget is a specific service within the finance department. So you can take the service name and drop it into the rows. Oops, I went to engineering. I'm going to go back to finance. So you'll see the services are accounting, administrative support, budget. So you can see this is how much we have budgeted for budget salaries and benefits. And again, with pivot tables, it's very flexible to allow you to take different views. So you could flip the order of major and service. So that will show you all salaries for each of the services, as opposed to the other view that had services then each of the majors. So there are just a few different ways you can look at this. You can also expand the pivot to see the different. Each of the majors is made up of multiple objects, which are those line items. So salaries is made up of permanent wages. This is where we budget for salary savings and the 1% budget efficiency. Pending personnel for planned reclasses or other personnel actions. We also have hourly wages, overtime, and others. So the finance department doesn't have a lot, but there's some agencies that have really big hourly budgets, like Parks and Library, for example. So if you want to dig into some of those detail, or if you want to look at overtime in streets, you can see that by expanding the salaries major. So I'm just going to take out the service. One other way that you might want to look at this, something that you can't easily do in the budget book, is if you wanted to look at multiple agencies at once. So let's say I wanted to compare finance to all of the other administration agencies like IT and assessor. So I could select multiple in the slicer. And right now, the way that the pivot table is set up, it's aggregating the budget. It's totaling the budget across all three of those agencies in the pivot table, which isn't super helpful. If I wanted to do more of a comparison, what I could do is take the agency name and drop it into rows. And then that gives me the total for assessor, finance, and IT. I could also drop it into the columns, and I could see those totals next to each other. So if you want to see, how much are all of the admin agency budgets compared to each other? How much are all PCD agencies compared to each other? You can play around with selecting multiple agencies and then pulling in the agency into the rows or columns to create different views for a quick comparison. And then I'm just going to show two more examples of how you can use the data that are slightly more advanced. As I mentioned, we have the data set up to automatically filter for general fund and the library fund. And you don't see that filter on the sheet, but you do see it here. And that's because we've hidden some rows. And you can see the row number jumps from 9 to 12. This is where we hid that filter. So if you select it and unhide and kind of move around our instruction text box, you'll see that filter. So let's say you want to see all agencies, regardless of what fund they are. You can select all. And that adds a whole lot of information. You'll see here that this list has expanded a lot. Water, for example, workers' comp, the original list because they were unfiltered. So right now I have, I wonder if there's a different way to do this. So here I have, I unfiltered, I changed it from select all to select one. So right now I'm just looking at water because I wanted to give an example of an enterprise agency. If you look at the total budget for water, the total budget is 0 because enterprise agencies, they basically pay for themselves. The agency revenues offset all of their expenses. So you can see this is mostly, in the case of water, this is mostly through rates paid by users. So charges for services is what properties pay on their water bill primarily. And you can see some other, what other objects make up that major revenue source. And then you'll see, you can sum up all of the expenses. That's 61 million, and that equals all of the revenues. So anytime you select an enterprise agency, you'll see total budget of 0, but if you look at the total expenses, that's the best way to understand the agency's total budget. There are Metro Transit and Public Health do have a transfer in from the general fund. So in Metro, that's the general fund subsidy. You'll see that as a revenue source called transfer in. And in Public Health, that's the city portion of the city county funding is also shown as a transfer in. And in Monona Terrace, you'll see a transfer in from restricted, which is funding from the room tax. So again, this type of view where you're looking at just one agency for enterprises is similar to the budget book. It's just a different way of becoming familiar with the data. But just if you're looking at an enterprise, make sure that this 0 budget isn't deceiving and you're looking at all expenses or all revenues to understand the total size of the budget. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we have some budgets that have multiple funds. For example, community development has a general fund budget, a CDBG fund budget, and a grants fund budget. Police and fire have general fund and grant funds. Streets and parks have restricted funds for special charges and impact fees. And that's one thing that we don't show in its entirety in the budget book. So I'm just going to give you an example with streets. So I selected streets, and right now I have all funds. If I drag the fund down into the rows, you'll see the general fund. You'll see other restricted. So this is the budget for services provided by the Resource Recovery Special Charge and the Urban Forestry Special Charge. Similar to enterprise funds, this nets to 0 because the charges pay for the expenses. And then there's a portion of streets that gets charged to the stormwater utility for activities such as street sweeping that keeps leaves out of storm drains, for example. So there are 3 funds in this budget. If you were to look at the streets division agency budget, it's going to take a second to load here. So in the budget overview page at the fund summary, you'll see all 3 of these funds. So general fund, 28.8 million. If you sum this up, that's 28.8 million. It's the same number. For the other restricted, the total we show the total expense, so that's 10.9 million. And again, if I just look at the expenses in the non-general fund, that's 10.9 million. And stormwater, it's the same. We're looking at just expenses. Otherwise, the budget would show 0. The one thing that we don't show in the budget book for multi-fund agencies is the line item detail for all of the funds. So on this overview page, we show the total budget for all 3 of these funds for streets. And then when we go to the very last page where we have the line item detail, we only show the primary fund. So you'll see agency primary fund, general. So we are not showing the line item detail for the resource recovery special charge, for example. In police and fire, we're not showing the line item detail on grants. In CDD, we're not showing the line item detail for CDBG funds. So if that's something that you're really interested in looking at, again, the line item detail, it follows the same order as what you'll find in the pivot table. So again, this in the general fund, you'll see charges for service, and in the pivot table for general fund, it's 265,000, which is the same amount here. But if you want to see what's charges for service for other restricted, you could expand this caret, and you could see how much is for urban forestry special charge. And then this other item is related to recycling. The name isn't super intuitive. If you didn't know what something meant, you could always reach out to myself or someone on the budget team. You could also pull in some additional information like the service name and add additional filters to try and deduce what an item means. But this is slightly more advanced. I know that most people are mostly focused on the general fund, but this is just one way that the data can be useful to you. So that is all I had prepared. I'm happy to take any questions or if people have follow up with people afterwards as well.
Thank you, Christine. Are there any questions for Christine on this presentation? Can you turn this on? Gary.
Yes. Is the alternate budget information for a failed referendum in the detail anywhere?
It is not. The data file just represents the main executive budget, and then the amounts for the alternate scenario are included in the tables in the executive summary and budget overview. And you would just, if we say we're reducing a position in a certain agency, you could see what's that agency's total salaries budget and assume it's less that amount.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions? Already. So I don't see any other questions on the queue. So Christine, thank you so much. I mean, I definitely would like this information to be clipped so we can share with other people. I think this is, this is something that we struggle every year trying to go to the book, and I find this spreadsheet extremely useful and higher level of detail. So if you guys have any questions about it, you can definitely ask Christine. If you have questions about Excel, I'm more than happy to help you out with that. Once you pick up a couple of skills, it's not that complicated. Christine, the second file that is listed there for the cost to continue, you don't have to go through the file, but can you just explain what that file is for, please?
Yeah, the cost to continue file is essentially the same as the executive budget. We had edited a few fields out of it, so it's a little bit shorter in terms of the number of columns and data fields, but all of those numbers, when you look at a pivot table, should correspond to what's in. It's not directly presented in the budget book, but that's where we got the baseline budget for the agency request. So you could see what the initial target was for a specific agency, and you can understand what components went into their budget. I think something we'll do in future years is have all of the phases of the budget in the same data file so that you can compare cost to continued, request, executive, and adopted within one sheet, which is easier when they're all in the same file. But this year, because of how we push things out, ended up in separate files.
All right, thank you so much. Alrighty, so thank you for the presentation. Again, I really appreciate it. No other questions on the queue at this moment. We'll move on to the next presentation. Thank you, Christine. The next item on the agenda is A577774, overview of city older adult services and resources. I know there's a few people on the online. I don't know who's going to present, so take it away.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Yolanda Shelton Morris. I'm the Community Resources Manager in the City of Madison's Community Development Division. And I am here with my colleague, Lynette Rowe, to oversee the CDBG unit within the division. So we will share some information with you today regarding older adult services and resources that we oversee within our respective units, and then answer any questions that folks have. I do have a PowerPoint presentation though, and so I'm wondering if I have ability to share my screen.
You should be able to do that. Can you?
Okay, after here. Oh, can everybody see my screen? The
Yes,
presentation?
ma'am.
So again, today we'll be talking about the older adult services and resources that are supported specifically within the Community Development Division. And just kind of to start, our work is centered around supporting older adults, particularly our older adults who are historically underserved and marginalized. So our low-income older adults, our older adults who are from historically marginalized populations, BIPOC older adults, LGBTQ, IA plus older adults, limited English proficient older adults, immigrant older adults. We really focus on centering and making sure that we're prioritizing our programs and resources to support those populations of older adults. And within our division, older adult services is kind of broken up into two main areas. We have our older adult services funding, which is provided currently to 6 agencies who provide services and supports around 4 main areas: case management, senior activities, home chore activities, and volunteer guardianship services. The second part of our older adult services is through our Madison Senior Center, which is owned and operated by the City of Madison. So I have a team that is primarily responsible for all the other areas that we oversee as that relates to school-age child and youth programming, crisis intervention and prevention programming, neighborhood center support, and employment services. So I have a team that oversees those programs, and then I have another team that is physically located at the Madison Senior Center that provides day-to-day support to older adults who are utilizing that space. So it is a day center. It is open to the public and to our older adults, specifically Monday through Friday, and we provide a variety of different services within that space. We have a daily meal that is served. We have a number of different services and resources that are provided. We have a foot care clinic, blood pressure screening is provided, haircuts are provided. We have a collaboration with the Overture Center to provide tickets for various programs that they have going on at the Overture Center that older adults can access. We have an e-pantry service, so older adults are actually able to come to the senior center and order food in partnership with the local pantry that we work with. And we also provide on-site case management services through a partnership that we would have with a local service provider in the area. We also provide a lot of lifelong learning programs as it relates to arts and music. We have a computer lab, so we have a number of different computers that older adults can use throughout the day. We also partner with a lot of different organizations, outreach, for one, to support our LGBTQ plus older adults through the 50 Plus Alliance Group. And we also work closely with Monona Terrace on various initiatives. In terms of health and wellness, we host a number of different exercise classes. We have classes that are specific to falls prevention, also a lot of different wellness topics, as well as dementia-friendly initiatives. And then last but not least is kind of outreach and engagement. I would say this is probably an area where we do outreach and engagement within the Madison Senior, but also outside of the Madison Senior. So we have 2 program coordinators who are assigned to different areas throughout the city of Madison and are going out into the community, getting connected with different senior living facilities and making connections with those residents who may, for whatever reason, not be able to physically come to or are not interested in coming to the Madison Senior Center, but are still looking to be engaged in some type of programming. And so the program coordinators work within those senior living communities to assess and get an understanding of what type of programming our older adults are interested in, and then work to either provide that programming on site at those locations or identify a facilitator that we can bring into those spaces to do that programming. In regards to the funding, we currently, as I mentioned, do provide funding in the area of older adult services and currently fund 6 agencies: Freedom Inc., the Goodman Community Center, Newbridge Madison Outreach, the Hmong Institute, and RSVP of Dane County. These agencies have been receiving this funding since 2016 and currently provide an array of services and support to older adults across the city of Madison. We are currently have a current funding process underway, which will soon be wrapping up early next year. And what we are looking to do in that funding process is to kind of identify some new funding priorities based on data and research that we have done in 2021 and more recently in 2023 with the assistance of Equity by Design, which is a consulting firm here in Madison, really looking at what are the needs of older adults in the city of Madison. What are the barriers to accessing those needs in the city of Madison? And how can we as a city use our funding process and our resource via the Madison Senior Center and our kind of outreach and engagement work to address those needs? And so that stakeholder engagement process took place in 2023. We've received that data. And one of the things that that emerged from that was that our Black and Brown older adults and other older adults who have been historically underserved are in need of more culturally relevant, culturally specific services. And so that is one of the newer areas that we are prioritizing in our funding process or have prioritized in our funding process. And as I said, that is a funding process that is currently underway, and we anticipate that we will be making final awards from that funding process early next year. So I know that is a lot of information that I just kind of shared with you all. I will pause to see if there are any immediate questions. If not, then I will turn it over to my colleague while she'll talk more about the property tax assistance and other housing programs that we have for older adults.
Thank you, Yolanda. Alder Harrington McKinney has a question.
President, my question really is around the senior center. It is a beautiful place. It has so many rooms and opportunity to do programming within that space. Could you say more about how that space is utilized? Give us a number of capacity in terms of how it's used, how often it's used, and
Sure.
it's a lot packed in, but I'm really interested in how engaged the senior center is in terms of reaching older adults.
So I will say, post-COVID, we did see a decline in the number of older adults that were physically coming to the senior center. And I think that was just because during COVID, a lot of our programming switched to a virtual mode. And so we still do have a lot of programming that is available in a hybrid format or that is offered completely online. And so that switch does impact the number of people that we see in the senior center based on the type of programming that they're engaged in. Earlier this year, though, I did hire a facility operations supervisor who is primarily responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations and management and oversight of that space. And one of the things that she's really been working on is developing those relationships with other service providers in the community, other partners that we can collaborate with who can also utilize that space. And so, as you mentioned, Alderman McKinney, it is a big, beautiful space. There are rooms that are not as utilized as we would like them to be, but we are working towards, again, developing those partnerships and collaborations with outside entities and groups who can come into that space. For instance, we are actually hosting a event next week, tomorrow, actually, for
Yes.
Black older adults, where they will come and get a tour of the senior center. We will be providing them with lunch. And our program coordinator, Erica Bowie, will be talking to them about the senior center specifically, the different types of programs that they could be engaged in, but also learning from them, what are they interested in? What types of programs would they like to see in this space? So I would say between Tuesday and Thursday, those are our busiest times because we have programming kind of throughout the day from beginning to end. Mondays and Fridays are typically our slower days, but typically over the lunch hour, anywhere between 11 and 1 is typically a busy time because that is when we're providing that lunch for folks. And there's also an opportunity for folks to come in and get connected with different services and resources that we have on site. With the addition of the second program coordinator who also started earlier this year, one of the things that has now been able to happen is to do a little bit more of that outreach and engagement and that education about what is the Madison Senior, what is City of Madison Older Adult Services. That's another thing. A lot of folks didn't even know or don't know or are aware of the fact that the City of Madison supports older adult services in these kind of two unique ways, one via funding and another via having a physical space for older adults to come to. And one of the things that we are intending to do via our funding process is those agencies that will be funded through older adult services will be required to be directly connected to the Madison Senior Center through programming and joint collaborative efforts. And so that is also a way that we hope to see an increase in attendance and an increase in offering more culturally relevant, diverse, engaging services at the senior center. But I think what's also really important to note, and this is one of the things that came out of the Equity by Design work, and I think it's one of the things that really drove us as staff to make the funding recommendations that are currently being considered, is that all older adults don't want to come to the senior center. They don't want to come downtown. They don't want to drive. They are unable to drive. They don't want to pay for parking. There is no bus that comes in front of the senior center. There are a lot of barriers, understandably so, as to why some older adults do not feel comfortable being in that space. So what we as a city need to be doing a better job of is learning how to serve people in that space, but also learn how to serve people outside of that space. And that's where that work comes from that I mentioned earlier about my program coordinators who are out in the community, being engaged with agencies that are centered in different geographic locations across the city where different senior living communities are, so that we can have a greater outreach. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to come to the senior center, but we're offering that program in the places where they feel most comfortable, that are clear next to their neighborhood center or what have you. So doing that work, but also recognizing that the more that we do that work and the more that we're able to share, hey, and we actually also have this space called the Madison Senior Center. Come to our Silver Santa annual holiday party in December, or come to our annual Help and Resource Fair. Once we kind of do that outreach and engagement in their space of comfort, hopefully we will be able to help transition or guide them to other opportunities that are available at the senior center. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. And so one final question is that transportation is a huge barrier, even, getting down to the center. Is there any opportunity to offer? I know that there's a parking garage that's close by. So are there any opportunities that we can be looking at to assist with the challenges of parking, transportation? That's a huge barrier
Absolutely.
that's a huge barrier to keep people from coming to the center.
Yes. So for instance, for tomorrow's event, we are providing transportation for those older adults who are in need of transportation. So we do have a contract or a collaborative relationship, I will say, with a local cab company who we can connect with to make sure that we're providing transportation for older adults as requested. We also do and are able to provide discounted coupons to folks who are driving to the senior center and are parking in the ramp. We do offer discounted tickets for that as well. But outside of that, we don't have any transportation resources within the Madison Senior Center, but we do try to partner and collaborate with other organizations that do may have a fleet of vehicles, or making sure that we're getting connected to those larger transportation services that could assist in some of those efforts. One of the things that the agencies that are funded by the City of Madison via Older Adult Services right now are participating in what we call Coalesce. It stands for something really long. I don't have it in front of me, and my apologies. But what it essentially is a space where we're bringing all the service providers that we're funding together to talk about that very issue or other issues that are impacting older adults. And how do we work together, cross collaboratively and together, to identify who has what and how, what are the barriers, what are the gaps, and how can organizations work together to better fill those gaps. Another space where they do have some of those very similar conversations, but on a much larger scale, is with age-friendly communities. And so that's the city, the county, and AARP. A lot of what we, within our cohort of service providers is talking about are also things that are being talked about at that county and even statewide level. So we are in spaces where we're having those conversations, and we're trying to work together and figure out how do we address some of the challenges that we see for our older adults.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder McKinney. Alder Conklin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Yolanda, thank you for that presentation. It was very helpful. I did have a question though. I'm just wondering, can you tell us how many older adults we are serving? Do you have that number?
I do not. I can provide it afterwards, though. I do have that information, just not right here next to me. We do keep track of all of our participants that come into the senior center via something called RecTrack. And so they have a little barcode, they scan, they get in. So we do keep track of that information. We also keep track of just the overall facility usage. So one thing I didn't mention is we also rent out the senior center. So birthday parties, graduation parties, other types of events, we do rent the space out to be used in that way. And that is also information that we track, but I can certainly provide reports on those numbers over the last few months if that's of interest to folks.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Yolanda. I guess another question I have too is, and I think you were kind of touching on it, like you're getting referrals from Freedom Inc. or things, but how do people get involved? I mean, I know you said the city needs to do more in advertising and educating people that it's there, but how do people get involved if they want to be a part of the senior center? Is it a certain age? Is it, like how does it operate, I guess?
So it does. We primarily serve older adults 55 and up. And so in terms of how do people get connected, it's virtually by word of mouth. So we have a lot of older adults who come into the space. They have a good time. They love bingo. And so, they share that information with, when they go back to their home communities. We just recently started a pool club or pool tournament. And that was started by word of mouth of an older adult gentleman who was coming to the senior center regularly, saw that we had a pool table and was like, I got some friends, I'm gonna go tell them, let's, come back, let's play pool together. So it's a lot of that by word of mouth. I think another piece of it is the work of my outreach and program coordinators too, right? So the fact that they are kind of specifically assigned to different areas throughout the city of Madison and being able to talk about City of Madison older adult services, particularly the Madison Senior Center, and being able to share that information and working, collaboratively with other organizations. And one of the things that is going to be new with this next cohort of agencies that we're going to be funding is that there will be a requirement that they are connected to the senior center in some way. So whether that's doing a program at the senior center or working collaboratively with senior center staff to develop some type of event or collaborative initiative. And so all of those things are the ways in which we hope that folks will hear more about the senior center and get connected to the senior center. But again, for me, it's less about trying to get everybody to the senior center because I recognize that there's a history of harm there and that space has not always been welcoming to everyone, right? And so how do we better rectify that, repair those relationships? And I think a big piece of that is meeting people currently where they are at and where they are comfortable being at. And once we do that, then maybe we can get, more people to come into the space. But also recognizing we take care of the people that are in the space too. We can do two things at the same time. We can take care of those that are in the space that come to the space regularly so that they continue to come, have good experiences. And so that when they leave, they are bringing their friends back. They are spreading the word, right? But then we're also working to serve those who do not come to the senior center for whatever reason that is, but also making sure that they know that there is a space that they can come to.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Yolanda.
I don't see any other hands on the queue. I want to thank Yolanda for coming to do this presentation. I've been at this job for 3.5 years, and I know that there has been a lot of transition going on about the senior center. There's been a lot of effort put on into making those services more equitable. So I'm glad that you guys have questions because honestly, there's so much going on. So I'm looking forward to hear Lynette's presentation. But I have a list of questions here, but between Alder McKinney and Alder Conklin, you kind of answered them all. So I only have one left because I want to talk about how you guys are communicating this and all these other questions that were already answered. But is the senior center specifically, volunteer centered? Do you use volunteers? And if that is the case, how do people volunteer for it?
Sure. And one thing I did forget to mention in terms of how do we kind of share out what's going on at the senior center, we do have a senior center website. We also have a monthly messenger called the Messenger. that includes information on what programming and activities we have coming up for the next month. And we also, in our messenger, recognizing that we are not the only space that is serving older adults. So we use our messenger to also share what programming and services is being offered by other organizations in the city of Madison, and those services that are specific to our most marginalized and underserved population of older adults. So where can our Black and Brown and LGBTQ plus IA older adults go outside of just the senior center? That is really important. So we make sure that that information is also centered in the messenger. But the Madison Senior Center, we do rely on volunteers. We have volunteers that serve and support our front desk, that also help serve the daily meal that is provided. We also have older adults that help facilitate some of the programming that we have. So we have folks who are interested in working in the computer lab with our older adults, or who may be interested in helping out at our annual Silver Santa event that we have every December. So there is opportunities for volunteers to be engaged individually and as a collective in terms of organizations and corporations who may want to do a volunteer project once a year, come help plant the flowers outside or something like that. We have those types of opportunities as well. We also now have social work students. So that is probably one of the things that I am super excited about through my additional work as a social work professor, is creating a space for students who are in the aging field and learning about how to serve and support older adults, also giving them an opportunity to do their internship or field placement at the Madison Senior Center. And so although they are considered to be staff, non-paid staff, they often are interested or learn about the Madison Senior Center by way of volunteering at the Senior Center, because that is typically a part of some of the schoolwork or coursework that they have to do is getting connected to an agency that serves and supports older adults. And so being able to kind of cultivate those relationships and bring students in has also been a way in which we can serve older adults that come to the Senior Center.
Thank you, Yolanda. And there's Harrington McKinney, do you have another comment?
President. So I want to thank Alder Conklin for asking the question of the number of older adults at service. That was a good question. That was on my checklist. And as you provide that, could you also provide service, as you said, Monday through Friday that the senior center is open? Is that Monday from 9 to 2 and through Friday? What are the hours? That's really what I want to know.
The hours on Mondays and Fridays is 8:30 to 1:30. And the hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are 8:30 to 4.
Okay. Could you follow up in the short 8:30 to 1:30?
The purpose of that initially started kind of post-COVID. Again, not really having a lot of activity or programming taking place every day of the week. And then once we had some staff transitions due to staff capacity and making sure that we had an adequate number of staff in the building at one given time. And based on the fact that we also were not seeing as many folks coming to the Senior Center on Mondays and Fridays, typically in the afternoons. Once lunch is over, the crowd and the rush is kind of gone. It's really quiet. And so that kind of factored into our decision to start with what we called summer hours. So the summer of 2022, we kind of transitioned to being open all day on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, excuse me. And then on Friday afternoons, we were closed to the public after 1 o'clock. Once the summer hours kind of ended and we moved in the fall, what we realized is that we still weren't having any programming or initiatives that were specifically taking place on Monday and Friday afternoons. And we also still had that staff capacity issue. And so we are fully staffed now, which is wonderful, but we've also recognized that that time allows for staff to work on other things while participants are not in the building. And so we, as of right now, are keeping that way so that staff can participate in trainings. They can have staff meetings at that time. And it's also a critical time for our program and outreach coordinators that they can get outside of the building. And so we kind of keep it at that set hours for now.
Thank you, Alder Harrington McKinney and Yolanda. I know Lynette has another event to go. So Alder Conklin, is your hand still up from before? You have another question for Yolanda?
I do, and it's just real quick. It's kind of a follow. Can you just shout out what website they should go to if they're interested in coming or volunteering, just for people to know?
Thank you.
That's it.
That's a good question, Alder Conklin, and I should know that off the top of my head, but I am going to look it up here really quickly.
I'm sorry, I'm giving you all the challenging questions
okay,
today.
that's okay, I got double screen, so it's not. So it's just cityofmadison.com /senior center.
Yep. Okay.
You
Thank
go
you.
on the City of Madison website, just like you would get connected to the Community Development Division, it is also embedded within the Community Development Division website as well.
Thank you, Yolanda, so much for the presentation. We'll coordinate with you to put some little package together to send to all elders, and people can use this information to put on their website. Again, thank you, and thank you everyone for their questions and interest on this topic. So without further ado, we're going to move then to Lynette to talk about some assistance that we have for seniors in the City of Madison. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Lynette Rhodes. I am the Community Development Manager that oversees our CDBG unit in the Community Development Division. So as Yolanda's unit provides a lot of the services with our older adults, my unit really focuses on housing and ensuring people can age in place and ensuring that we have quality housing for older adults. So I have a very brief presentation of some of the programs that we run through our unit. The first one is the property tax assistance for seniors. This program is to help with paying for property taxes for households with someone over the age of 65. I'm sure you all have heard our assessor probably give presentations about how the state requires that the assessment for property taxes is fair across all types of properties. So that means that the state does not allow us as a municipality to provide any type of discounts when it comes to property taxes due to somebody's age. But we recognize that there is a good majority of individuals within the City of Madison who have owned their property for 20, 30, sometimes longer, and have paid off a lot of their debt, but they might have fixed income. They might have little other assets when it comes to savings, checkings, and other opportunities that as their property tax comes due every year, even though they don't have a mortgage, they can't pay that property tax. So through this program, we want to ensure that those individuals have access to some type of resource so that they can maintain their housing if they don't have the liquid assets to pay. So I have two slides that I put into the presentation just to provide more information on what those loan terms are for the program and those qualifications in case anyone comes and looks at this presentation in future dates. We do only provide financing for properties that are in the City of Madison. This money is in CDD's capital budget under what's called consumer lending programs. The name consumer lending refers to the programs that we operate directly out of CDD. And so this is a program that individuals contact my staff. They send out an application and send us all of the material that we need to underwrite that file. The loan, once it is approved, it does go out as a loan on the property. That is how we are able to provide this financing within still the state regulations that we are are not providing just cash or a grant financing. It's very similar to what in the private market someone would call a reverse mortgage. It is a lien on the property for the amount that we have paid for their property taxes. They do not have to pay that loan back, though. This is what is the benefit for the household. It sits out as what we call a deferred loan. So we do not require that it's paid back until someone no longer owner occupies that property, or they sell their property. So this has been a great opportunity. We have about 30 individuals that take advantage of this loan program each year. Of that means we provide about $180,000 of assistance to pay for property taxes on any given year. In order to advertise the program, we do work with other city departments. For instance, we make sure that there is advertisement at times in water bills. We make sure that there's advertisement in the tax bills itself. And then we partner with Yolanda to make sure there's information at the senior center and with our agencies that we fund on senior services as well. Yolanda, if you want to go to the next slide, it's just an overview in more detail. Again, if anyone goes back to look at the kind of qualifications, we do have income limits, and we do have just some general requirements on an individual's, for instance, liquid assets. Again, the goal of the program is to help some of the most vulnerable population. And so we do kind of screen and do underwriting to ensure an individual in a household needs this assistance. The requirements for this program are embedded in Madison General Ordinance. And so we follow that ordinance throughout all of our underwriting guidelines. And then the next program I wanted to mention is not specifically on for seniors, but it's a program that is utilized. Yolanda, if you want to go to the next slide. In that program is our relationship with Project Home. Project Home, we provide funding to do both major and minor home repairs. We see, again, a lot of times individuals that want to age in place utilizing these programs because either one, they now also have that fixed income and can't do major repairs of roof replacement or major plumbing issues that might be happening in their household. And so they need to utilize some other assistance in the form of, again, a deferred loan that they would get on behalf of Project Home would help them access that loan, and they would not have to pay that back while they lived in that property. Besides major improvements, we recognize that there is sometimes where individuals just need their home to be more accessible. So we fund Project Home to also work with our City of Madison residents, ensuring that there is a smaller opportunity to provide some assistance for discounted labor in that minor home repair as well. Yolanda, if you want to go to the next slide, I want to make sure that I'm highlighting a program that we funded for the first time in our last RFP cycle, and that is specifically a grant program dedicated in the South Madison area. We recognized that the single family homes that were coming in that were formerly in the town of Madison might not be meeting minimum housing code standards. So we worked with Project Home to make sure that we were targeting that area. Again, making sure also we were targeting with older adults who might not be able to make those repairs on their own, to make sure, especially with housing quality standards, that anything that was going to fail in any type of inspection was getting support to get rehabbed. So this program, the property tax assistance, we operate directly within community development. This program is a referral to Project Home. So I have the information for Project Home on this slide. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention and show a map on our last slide is the work that CDD does since we have launched our Affordable Housing Fund. So Yolanda, if you want to go to the next slide. The next slide is a map of new affordable housing that has either been funded or actually not funded through our Affordable Housing Fund, but new developments that are age restricted. So while seniors can, get access to any of the over 2,000 affordable units, we do work with developers who are especially seeking those low-income housing tax credits to ensure that there is age-restricted housing that is being built within the city of Madison. So you can see we have pretty much put and focus this in the west and the north and east areas in the city of Madison through our RFP processes. Through this kind of funding and this development, we have created over 550 new units of age-restricted housing for older adults that are considered income and rent restricted. And about over 650 total that have been developed that are age restricted in our community. So that is all I have, actually, just to do an overview of what we've been doing on housing standards and quality and helping people through our loan programs of aging in place or developing new housing in the city of Madison.
Thank you, Lynette. Any questions for Lynette? Alder Harrington McKinney.
I absolutely have a question because I'm an senior myself. So I'm interested. You talked about the housing initiative in South Madison. Say more about that, and what was the selection process for that, and what period of time does that cover?
So we did a request for proposals in 2022. That was the last time that we did what we called our owner-occupied request for proposals. And during that time in our RFP, that was when the town of Madison was coming into the city. We specifically sought out projects from agencies that could do some specific targeting in the South Madison area. Again, recognizing that when those houses were in the town of Madison, they did not have building inspection like we do with the city of Madison, overseeing and making sure that housing was meeting certain housing quality standards. So as we worked with building inspection, and we talked a lot about how when these properties become part of the city, we're making sure vulnerable populations have access to some type of program like a grant. So Project Home submitted an application through our RFP process to operate, again, our major and minor home repairs that are available anywhere in the city of Madison. But they submitted a third application addressing specifically, as we brought in the town of Madison, how they could address that. So that contract will go, we ran it from 2022 to 2023, 2024. We awarded it in 2022. So they've been operating it for 2 years. They will receive the award again in 2025 to operate these programs. And then in 2025, we will be doing the RFP again for owner-occupied services for future years.
In that South Madison corridor, will it be expanded? Will it be expanded?
In our next RFP?
Yeah, so you said in 2025?
Yep. We can talk about that. So the minor home repair right now is kind of our expansion. That one is available to anyone in the city of Madison. And so we can look at utilizing that program in other areas as well.
Thank you, Alder Harrington McKinney. I don't see any other hands raised. So quick question for the mobile homes in the Park Street area. So the owner can request these changes, or do they have to go through to the landowner? Like, how does that work?
So for the South Madison loan program, mobile homes are eligible for that program. And so the owner of the mobile home, so someone that is even renting the mobile home, can contact Project Home and they can work with them.
And how is that being communicated? Like, for the past 2 years, was there any any targeting communication? I mean, I just met someone a couple of weekends ago, and they literally asked me about building inspection. So, and they live at the mobile home. So was there any communication directly and in all the different languages and things like that for them to know?
Yep, we have been working with Project Home since they took over the programming to make sure that they were doing targeted marketing.
Okay.
But we can make sure, again, that our building inspection, especially when new staff come in, that they understand that these programs are available.
Thank you so much. I don't have any other questions on the queue. Thank you, Lynette, for, again, very good information pertaining to the seniors. So thank you to Yolanda and CDD in general. Yeah, thanks. So we move on to the next item on the agenda, which I lost from my file. Oh, there, got it. Which is Legistar number 83516, Alder Committee updates. Anyone has any updates that they want to share? Anything coming up that special for us to keep an eye on? I don't see any hands raised. So we'll go ahead and move on to council updates. Council office updates, 81. Oh, I'm sorry, Alder Martinez Rutherford, you have a question?
I'm so sorry. Did you say committee updates?
Okay, go ahead.
I've got EOC is doing a listening session. The Equal Opportunities Commission is doing a listening session for people in apartments, mobile home residents, and folks living in temporary shelter to talk about management complaints, property upkeep, and city resources that are available to them. It's going to be Thursday, November 21st at 6 p.m. at Sandberg Elementary. And I will post this on the District 15 blog for everyone to know about. So just wanted to let y'all know about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Madam President, thank you so very much, Alder, for bringing that up. And I know it's on the east side, but that is such a large problem. We're facing it across the city. And so my ask is, Madam President, how can we begin to look at those apartment deficiencies and problems that are not just on the east side where you're talking about? It really is prevalent. Specifically, I'm facing it on my side of town as well. And so what I would ask is that if we can work together and figure out how we can, I know we can't solve the problem, but how we can begin to hold out-of-state owners accountable. That is a challenge that I'm facing now, and I don't know how to resolve that, but definitely it's something that we really do need to take a look at.
Thank you, Alder Harrington McKinney. I think, for me, trying to go to the EOC meeting will be a beginning to see if they can move around the city to present to other people. That will be a start. But yes, it's across the city spectrum that we have in these issues. And thank you, Alder Harrington McKinney. So with that, we'll move to the council updates, Legistar A13A2.
Thank you very much. And I sent it out to all alders as well as CCEC members. I'd like to share my screen to talk about one set of tips in particular this time. So you may have noticed that since we've migrated to Microsoft 365, that the spam quarantine folder is even more sensitive than it had been in the past. And I have quite a bit, right? And I have made it a habit, and Isaac does it as well, because Isaac picks up the public comment for anything that comes into all alders. He picks it up to attach, and so he has made it a habit of looking in there, because lots of things are in there. And I go every day. I do it every day, frankly. And I wanted to show everyone how to do it so that if they're not already in the habit, that they can pick up that habit. Because I think the old filter wasn't quite as aggressive or assertive or sophisticated, and so we maybe took it for granted in the past. But this one is quite good. Quite. There's things in there. Everybody take a look, please. Everyone within the sound of my voice, please take a look. You'll see it comes in from IT agency. It's called City of Madison Email Security Digest. You click on that, and then you see the recent things that it's holding, and you can preview. If you're not sure, you preview it, and it takes you to the website with the whole spam kind of box. I'm not sure what the right term, the quarantine room is. And you can actually see what's all in there, and you can preview it to see if because sometimes, you know, those phishing attempts look really can be quite realistic, right? So you want to take a look sometimes to see, oh, that looks like it might be something, but let me see. You can take a look at that. You can make a decision. You can review that, and then you can release it. And so I just wanted to make sure that I drew everyone's attention to this. Because I have absolutely had to make that a habit, and you all, I strongly suggest you all do as well. It's quite easy once you get into the routine, and you can search it in your inbox and so on. I think I get one every day. I'm not sure if that's true for everyone. Okay. So I wanted to just highlight for everyone that particular tip. I have a bunch of listing, you know, we're coming up on November, December time, so holidays are coming. So there's a bunch of listings of our staff out of office. And again, I have highlighted some really great training opportunities with the city for free that alders are eligible for. And like I've said before, please, I would love to know your feedback when you go to one. So please consider it. Anyway, I know we're running out of time, so that's the short version. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And yes, it's not that the filter is better, it's just new, and you need to help it decipher what is good or not. So the more you use it, the better it gets. Yeah, so, okay, so I don't see any questions for Karen. I don't see anybody on the queue. So the next item on the agenda is future agenda items, 78-125. You guys can email those. I think we got one from Alder Harrington McKinney the other day, which actually is a good one. So we can definitely add that on the future agenda item. You can email those, so we should be fine there. And I guess it's almost 6 o'clock. I will just get an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
John, a second by Alder Harrington McKinney. Okay, well, thank you guys. Is there any opposition or recording unanimous vote for adjournment? Don't see any hands. Have a good half an hour. See you soon. Thank you.